Good morning, everybody. In the early 70s, a young, ambitious entrepreneur with a knack for spotting opportunities decided to try and make some money in the music industry. He launched a mail-order record retailer, undercutting the competition with lower prices. But he didn't stop there. Within a few years, he opened a physical store and then, fueled by pure audacity, launched a record label. He signed a few unknown artists, some with controversial reputations, and watched as their music took the world by storm. The company he built became a global powerhouse, changing the face of the music industry forever. He was a self-aware noob to business, so he decided to name his company Virgin. That's right, I'm talking about Richard Branson, and he accomplished all of this without a single page of a formal business plan. Today we're talking about business plans and ask the question, do they matter? What are they used for? And what are the consequences if I get it wrong? All that today and more on How to Founder. Chris, that's your cue?
Oh, I'm Chris.
Oh, third episode.
Hey, I'm Anthony. Whatever. I'm Chris. Listen, welcome to How to Founder, a show with two guys whose faces are made for radio who decided to do a video podcast about foundering and all the failures we've had. We actually say founders are the pioneers who drive economic prosperity, and we're here on How to Founder. We try to equip them for the journey. We have today a guest, our first ever guest, Anthony. I'm so excited. It is Kaylee Philbrick-Theuerkauf.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
you got it.
Very nice. A strategic business planning expert who's helped hundreds of entrepreneurs turn their dreams into million-dollar realities. She's the CEO of The Exceptional Plan, where she's not just crafting killer business plans, but challenging the very notion of what it means to plan for success.
Hey, look at that. StreamYard is working, Chris.
Holy cow.
There's actually three of us on the screen.
That is, and it makes our faces even smaller, which makes it a better looking podcast.
Yeah. Good morning, Kaylee.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Good. Welcome to the show. So let's jump right into it. Richard Branson famously said, if I had to write a business plan, I would have never started Virgin. Do you think this is practical for most founders?
Practical in which way? That he would have never started, or that he would not have known how to put together the business plan?
So, in general, he started Virgin without a business plan. Would you recommend that for other founders? Do you think that's the right approach, or do you think you need a formal business plan before you start?
Yeah. So nature of the business, I truly believe that having a business plan sets you up for success. There are some times where, founders don't have it initially, but they always end up going back and creating it retrospectively. Because, when you're first starting, everything, makes you have an idea in your head and you think you know exactly how you're going to go and execute upon it. However, when it grows rapidly, or slowly, however it falls, it's so important to, if you don't have it when you first start, to go back and organize everything so that you can grow without it being completely out of control.
Chris, what do you think?
First of all, I want to say that why did you have to call out Richard Branson, who has very long, lovely hair? I feel like maybe you could call out some more bald entrepreneurs, like Bezos is bald. Maybe stuff like that. Anyway,
I think Bezos had a business plan, so it wasn't as interesting a story.
That's exactly right. Right. That's true. So my question around that is, what is a business plan? Because when I first started out, I came out of CU Denver's Entrepreneurship Center, and I wrote quite possibly the world's worst business plan. I think it was probably like 17 pages of pure garbage because I had to have it to enter a competition, and people looked at it and laughed at me. And then after they laughed at me, I went up onto a whiteboard and created a business plan. So you tell me what your definition of a business plan is.
So is that for me?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't really care what Anthony
Just
thinks.
check.
You're the business plan expert.
Yeah.
I think that's why we have you on the podcast, Kaylee.
Right.
Yeah. I do recall my part here. So yes, my apologies there. So a business plan, it depends on where you are in your life cycle as a business owner. So when you are in your very first year, a business plan is truly the blueprint. So where are you right now with your business, and what are the goals and the benchmarks that, using industry data, usually more often than not, are you going to use to measure against? That's and then quite honestly, a business plan is also then that insight. If you're going for funding, like say you're going for like an SBA loan, that business plan is truly that insight to you know the lenders to understand, okay, Chris does have a plan here, he has a plan of action, and he has benchmarks that he's measuring against. But then year 2 and year 3, now that you have data underneath you and you have something that how you performed that first year against that business plan, now that business plan becomes more of a strategic plan in those year 2, year 3, and beyond. And now it's more tactful. So, okay, this is where we were at last year. This is where we want to be this year. And what's the plan of how we're going to bridge the gap between those two different goals?
So it's kind of funny. I think I've written 2 business plans in my career. Neither of them were at the start, right? Neither of them were this is my plan, because honestly, and I think I'm a lot like other founders that I've met anyway, and that is we don't know what we're doing yet. Like we're going into, we have this idea for a product or a service or where we want to go, and therefore writing, like, we don't have a business plan for How to Founder. Chris and I didn't do it. Like, we have a plan for the business, but we don't have a business plan. And so I'm wondering, I think what you said was kind of like a line that's interesting, and that is, if you're gonna go out and seek outside capital, it's kind of that perfunctory requirement, right? Like, so if you're gonna go get an SBA loan and you try to get an SBA loan without a business plan, it's going to be a little difficult. But if you're bootstrapping a company, a business plan may be the wrong first step. Do you have a thought on that, either one of you?
Oh, I've got thoughts, but I'll give you a chance. Go ahead.
I guess wrong step in which way?
So I'll give you an example. So the classic example is there's a lot of advice out there right now, and I kind of align with it. Is like, just get started, just go and see if you can sell the thing that you're going to be doing. Pre-sell it. Go see what it's like to have that conversation with customers. See what's going to resonate with your audience. before you set in motion you put down on paper a plan on what the business is. You don't even know if you have product market fit. You don't know if you have customers. You don't even know if your hypothesis on the business is a good hypothesis. So the way I operate is very tactile. I feel my way through a business as I start it, and if I wrote it down on a business on an actual form of business plan, I might be wrong. I might be. I will absolutely be wrong.
Oh
on
yeah.
the things that I'm doing. So now I'm leading the witness, right? So I asked you a question, and then gave you the answer. But you asked, so that's what I meant. I mean, it's like sometimes it's better just to start than to plan it out in detail.
Yeah. So I think it depends. So I always tell, the people that I'm working with, if they're at that idea stage, like, yes, you do need to plan it. You know, because like you do need to just start. But then once you start, you need to plan. So, for example, if you have like a technology, actually, really kind of any idea that you do have to make sure that you have that validation. And sometimes that validation takes a little bit longer, but it could look as simple as putting a landing page up and having people join a wait list for your product, or for whatever you're creating. And then when you get that, you have some data behind you. But once you have the data behind you that, okay, this is something that, it's needed in my market. It has an opportunity to grow at a national level. And there's people that, if that's what you want to do, and there are people that are interested in it. Okay, now I need to plan about what I'm going to perform against, because
Is there
at the
is there
end of the day,
triggers? Sorry, Kaylee. Are there
no,
so
you're good.
you I think you skipped over the meaty part, which is what's the thing that makes you go from do I have a good idea to this is a real business? Like what's that trigger that okay, now I need to like put my grown-up pants on and
I mean, we're hoping you're wearing pants, Anthony.
You never know. You never know.
I mean, I know that we're only seeing you from the
I'm not standing up. Don't ask me to stand up.
But can we just agree that this is a pants-on show?
No, I refuse to. I refuse to agree.
I am here to say that I am wearing pants. I would like to clear myself here,
Thank you for bringing our show level up a little bit.
Anyway, so when is that point at which you realize, okay, it's not an idea anymore, it's a business, and I need to take it seriously?
When you have verified people that will not just use it, like once and oh, here we go, like, oh, okay, then we're done. But you have a target market that will use your product or service or whatever it is, and that number is either repeatable or it's incredibly scalable. And I think too, when you have a product or you have an idea that's viable, when you get feedback from the target market of them telling you, like, I like this or I don't like this, and you make it so that you're really appealing to a large opportunity here. You have to have that traction though, initially. And even then, so like you can have traction and you can think that you're, on the right path, but then the most important thing and where a plan comes into play is that you're going to have to pivot also as you continue to grow your business. It's never what you initially get as your feedback is never going to be, the thing that you stay on that path as you continue to grow your business. You get that initial feedback, because there's, a lot of people saying that they will use it. Again, it's scalable in terms of how big that group is, but then you also continue to pivot from there.
So here's the reason why I agree with you, Kaylee, and the reason why you're wrong, Anthony, which is
You're pointing the wrong direction. You pointed at Kaylee when you said Kaylee was.
I mean,
when I was wrong.
That's going to be part of it. So, like, I am dyslexic.
Okay.
Like Richard Branson is, right? So, like Richard Branson, the notion of me sitting down and writing a 12 to 15 to 20 page document is like getting my teeth filled without Novocaine, right? It's incredibly painful. But the idea of actually creating some sort of a plan and documenting what my hypothesis is, and this is what I think Kaylee's saying, and I think this is where I agree, is that I don't necessarily agree that you need to write down a formal written business plan that you turn into somebody and say, here's what I'm doing. But unless, of course, you're going for an SBA loan, which they're going to require, right? But what we have been doing over the last several days, and I think is critical for any business, is to write down your hypothesis and then write down how you're going to go test that hypothesis in the marketplace. And you're right, Kaylee, I don't think you need it until you get some sort of early traction. But where I see founders fall off along the way is that they forget what it is that they're trying to do or get distracted. I mean, you and I are models of discipline and focus, right, Anthony? We don't have ADHD at all. We don't get distracted by shiny stuff. Okay, that's Kaylee. We get distracted.
I'm sorry. What'd you say, Chris?
Sorry, what? Squirrel. Right. So the idea there is that you have to then somehow document the thing that you're going to do. Even if it's as simple as, to me, it's sticky notes. Like, just put it up on a whiteboard and say, here is my hypothesis. Here's what I believe to be true. And if this is true, then I can build a business off of these things based on the following assumptions. And then systematically working through and testing those assumptions. I think if you're calling that a business plan, Kaylee, I'm on board. If it's a 15-page document, Richard Branson and I we're gonna opt out.
No, and a business plan is going to look different for every single person. But the most important thing is that you have those benchmarks to measure against, because you can't improve what you can't measure, and it's so important to have, like, if you say you don't want to have, a full-blown business plan, because, and honestly too, if you're just using it for yourself, there are some pieces of a business plan that you don't always need, like company description. If you're just going to be the person with the business, you're like, I don't need to know how it's legally filed. This is my business. What do you mean? I know how it's filed. Stuff like that is important for, funding opportunities. But at that early stage, if it's just for you, it's not as important. But if you're just going to do the business plan for yourself, then, okay, what is that opportunity? What is that initial market research that you found, from looking, from the resources online as well as testing it in the market? What are those financial projections and benchmarks that you're going to measure against? And then strategically, how do you want to grow and how do you want to change as an organization immediately within the next year? But then, also planning for those 3 and 5 year projections as well. At least 3 years. 5, it can get a little difficult.
And the thing I think that you bring up, which is really critically important, it's not something that we've really talked about yet, but it comes really from my own experience. That same first business plan that I wrote that was so terrible. I didn't sit down and write a personal business plan. But it was just me, right? So a business plan could have been my thing. But what I didn't understand is what was my personal and family risk profile. And what were the metrics along the way that knew that I had made actual progress towards something.
Yep.
And so I was so ambitious and I was so eager and I was so excited to get going that if I had written down, hey, by 6 months from now or by 3 months from now, similar to what we did yesterday, Anthony,
Yep.
of just saying, hey, we have a theory here. Let's go test it. And we have a date behind it. I didn't do that. And the consequences of that were devastating to me. I used to have this thing called a savings account.
What are those?
Yeah, I don't even know. It had a few zeros. Like it wasn't terrible, right? And that savings account.
I have a credit card. Is that the same thing?
Similar.
Okay.
Similar.
All right.
Right. Yeah. One goes up, the other goes down, whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But I had a savings account. And if I had stopped for a moment and measured my own personal risk profile that I had to go into this business and said, here are my break points along my journey. I'm not willing to go into debt, which I did, right? I'm not willing to drain all of my savings, which I did. If I had stopped along the path and actually asked myself or even planned early, it would have saved me so much pain early on. And that's where founders tend to be people that just run through walls, right? We just keep fighting and keep fighting and keep fighting and keep fighting. That sense of perseverance is almost universal to this group of people. But in this case, a business plan could have saved me massive amounts of pain. Massive. Because I would have known hey, I have nothing. That first business I started was terrible. It was stupid. Right? I shouldn't have ever quit my day job.
Well, I'm really curious, Chris, about we're talking about KPIs, key performance indicators, or benchmarks, or things that are measurable. Can we get specific here? Because we want to be tactical for the founders that are listening in. All three of you guys. Thank you, by the way.
Thank you. Hey, John says good morning. Good morning, John. Good to have you here, man.
No, but I want to get tactical. So, Kaylee, as you know, the whole point of How to Founder is Chris and I are going to be running these podcasts in an effort to create a reference manual for founders. So we're going to take the transcripts of this conversation and actually write content and eventually an actual book where people can jump into and say, all right, so do I need a business plan, right? And they can jump to this section and talk about it. And we want to make it as tactical as possible. And first of all, build a mental model about what a business plan is, right? But also so the tactical piece of it would be, what are some of those things? What have you seen over the hundreds of companies that you've helped that are really, what's a good key performance indicator or benchmark, and what's a bad KPI or what are things that you should measure and shouldn't measure?
Is a good KPI, we're going to kick ass?
Yeah, we're going to kick ass. Well, for me, I always use profitable revenue as a KPI, which I think is the most, I've heard some people say that's the only one that matters, and I've heard other people say that's the output, not a measurable. So I'd love to hear your thought on that.
Bad VC right now they're all just turning up their nose. Bad VC, profitable revenue.
Profitable revenue.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I think when it comes to the KPIs, revenue and financial benchmarks are incredibly important. When I'm looking at, and it really depends on how your business is structured, because every business is going to have different KPIs that you're measuring against. But one of the things I think of off the top of my head is if you're a SaaS company, for example, you live online. And so important KPIs that you have at that point in your business are what are the marketing channels, for example, that are going to drive people to your platform. What are you using to drive people? So whether that's paid ads, email marketing, combination of the two, what are those different channels? And then within those channels, how much does it cost for you to get one client? That costs, customer acquisition cost is probably one of the most important KPIs, um, you know, at that level to measure against. And then other benchmarks that's important to look at is, how, like, how many customers are you aiming to get, per month? And then what is that bottom line impact then to your revenue? Because especially in the first year, you're probably going to be operating at a loss, but you're using a lot of benchmarks against industry data. So percentage of salaries and different things like that. So I don't know if I'm overly answering, but it really depends
No,
on
those
what
are
you're looking
two
at.
good ones. So what one you mentioned customer acquisition cost, and then
Hmm.
basically you're talking about customer growth.
Yep.
Um, y-
And also
I would agree
churn,
with those.
like,
Customer
and
churn.
churn rate as well. Yes, like what's the industry, again, we're talking about a SaaS platform, but what is your industry churn rate for your type of business? And I've seen stats around, like, some fintech platforms can be upwards of a 90% churn rate. Um,
Wow.
so what is the industry churn rate? And then what is your churn rate? Because you want to understand how many people are going to be, how much you're growing, but then how many people are also staying on your platform, because that all
How
impacts
about
your
customer
bottom line.
satisfaction? First of all, is customer satisfaction a good KPI, and how do you measure that?
So I think customer satisfaction, it is an important thing to measure. However, how you're going to be measuring that is so different um, as you grow as a business. So, in that first few years, you're really using that to say, um, you know, uh, this is um, this is how we're going to even get that initial product market fit, like we were talking about, and how you have to continually, like, reiterate against that and grow from that. But um, once you have that, say again, we're talking about a SaaS platform, but once you have that SaaS platform um, built and understood, and maybe there's not really a lot of changes you can make to them, or they're very small changes that you can make against them, then yes, what is that ongoing customer satisfaction? What's that average customer satisfaction? And I mean, the best way to measure that would be, you can have quantifiable information, such as, through surveys and getting feedback, but then also you could do focus groups and get that uncensored feedback from clients when they're on or users when they're on your platform. What are some things that they can't really say in a survey, or that they don't really care to say in a survey?
How do you feel about
But
net promoter score (NPS)?
I think the net promoter score, I think it can be helpful, um, definitely. In which context are you talking about net
Just
promoter
for
score?
measuring customer as the metric to measure customer satisfaction.
Yeah, I think that you can use that. But like I said, I feel like it's really, I mean, honestly, if you can do it, I think getting people in a room and having a conversation with them is probably the best way to get that feedback.
I
There's only
I
so
have a
much
story on
quantifiable
a
this.
data.
100% agree.
Yeah, I have a
Agree.
story. I have a
So
story
go
like
ahead, Anthony.
one-on-one conversation where one-on-one conversations are the best, right? I remember talking
Mhm.
to one of the founders I was working with, and they're like, our net promoter scores like we're the industry best, and I'm like, yeah, but your product sucks. Like like
Yeah.
you're not talking to your customers. You figured out a way to game your NPS.
Mhm.
And so so you're not really talking to the people that are using your product because nobody likes it. You've just figured out a way to only get good reviews for your product.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then
Sorry,
also
Chris.
It's a
too,
vanity metric, right? Like,
It's a
Yeah,
vanity
well,
metric at the point.
but a survey can do that too. Because like, I don't
Mhm.
know. Okay, I'm literally saying how a survey can be very helpful, and then I'm kind of saying how it's not very helpful because I'm a case study of how it's not always helpful. But like if I get a survey sometimes, and I'm just trying to get out of the screen, I'll just put like 555 or like 111, like I'll just quickly, you know, fill it out. But if there would be an opportunity for me to be in the room and talk about my feedback, I mean, there would be so much information that you could glean from that. And I think, yeah, one on one would be great, especially if people don't want to speak out in a room. But if you had also just even a group of like 5 people giving their feedback and they're all bouncing off of each other, sometimes, in favor of your business and maybe not in favor of your business. Maybe they're all talking about how they have the same issue with the same thing. But getting a room together also to get that feedback is just invaluable.
Here's where
Go ahead, Chris.
I think that this is a super interesting conversation because we're talking about two different things. And so, Kaylee, I want to ask one question, but then I want to follow up with a comment. Let's say that I am starting a SaaS company, and let's say I am starting a fintech company. What you're saying is it is critical for you to go out and understand your market and understand what is the behavior of people in your market. Where do I go to find that information? I've seen wildly different stats when it comes to SaaS companies. Like, what's a good resource for me to go out and start to understand my market?
Honestly, there's no right answer there. And I think that what happens a lot of the time with founders, and what I am very honest about, is you don't know what's going to work until you have tried almost everything. And it's only then, and back to the KPIs, it's only because so say you try everything to get feedback, to tap into the market, um, and and again, not necessarily, you don't need to try everything all at one time. That's another something that, as
Everything everywhere all at once.
yeah,
Yeah,
as entrepreneurs, we're like, okay, let's figure it out. Let's just do everything all at one time.
right.
You still need to be systematic about how you do it. So say there's 9 channels, doing 3 at a time, but you want to continually measure what is that customer acquisition cost. So like if you're a SaaS platform, maybe you're charging $20 a month to be on that subscription. Um, if the if you have Google paid ads, and then that's uh, your cost per click is $1, and then your conversion rate is pretty high, then okay, that acquisition cost is pretty low. We're getting a good amount of people from that. That's $1 out of $20. That's a great thing to use as our benchmark. But you could have another channel, say it's email marketing, and you have a ton of people on your subscribing list, but it costs $20 to run that email marketing. Is that really worth it? So you have to test things, and I recommend, depending on the platform, you give it between 30 and 90 days to test it out. You can't say, oh, within a week I know if PPC ads work for me or not. So that's really the only way you're going to know, is by
By
testing
doing it. Yeah.
and eliminating as it
So
doesn't work.
I want to point something. I want to point something interesting out here. In living as an entrepreneur and as a founder, you embody contradiction.
Yeah.
And one thing that you said, Kaylee, is a fascinating contradiction, right? And you're right on both sides of it. One is that you need a plan, and the other thing, and I wrote it down. You don't know what's going to work until you try everything.
Mm-hmm.
How do you reconcile that? How do you reconcile having a plan?
Both things are true, right?
But both
Yeah.
things are true.
Yeah.
But how can both things be true? How can that be possible?
Yeah. So You can try everything and still have a plan, meaning you have something that you're measuring against. How do you know if it's going to work if you're not measuring against it? And then once you know what's working, double down on that. Really build out a full-blown, baked out plan. And I think that's, when it comes to a business plan, I think that that's one of the things that people get so worked up about also is that they're like, oh, we created a business plan. It should be, good to go. We should be good for the whole year. We did
Right.
our due
Yeah.
diligence and we're good. And that's not true. A business plan is a living, breathing document. You're always going to be updating it and revising it. You know, yes, especially in that first year, but then also like as you continue to grow as a business, it can be, like I said earlier, it starts to become more of a strategic plan, because now you have specific actions, you know exactly where you are and where you want to be, and you have meat to measure against, but you have to reiterate. So if you're looking at it from the very beginning, you go out, you test the market, you get that feedback. When you're testing, you're also testing different channels and you're getting feedback, simultaneously. You're being systematic about how you're going about testing so you can measure and then, you know, finalize that plan, wrap it up with a bow, but understand that that's going to change as well. It's
Here,
never going to be
here's
perfect.
here's what I'm hearing, and I think this is where I completely agree with you. And this is where I think I've seen founders get it completely wrong, which is people will often experiment without documentation. And it drives me freaking nuts, man. It's
Mhm.
like, hey, we went out and tested Google pay per click and we crushed it. I was like, great. What was that versus a regular social post? Well, we
Yeah.
don't know because we didn't write it down. And so the notion there is that if you're going to do experiments, and you should do experiments, tactically have some sort of formation, like shameless plug, Anthony, we can put up at some point that experiment tracker that I created to say, start with a hypothesis, say what you think is going to happen, give a budget, and then do just one piece of math, which is, Kaylee, your cost to acquire. And in this case, it doesn't have to even be your cost to acquire because you're probably not going to get a customer after your first bunch of, LinkedIn ads or pay-per-click ads, right? But you can say, how much is it going to cost for me to get somebody to my website? And then you can start to build some sort of a reasonable model about what your conversion ratio is going to be on that site. Tactically, this is just something because I spent the last, 20 something years, Kaylee, in the world of customer acquisition. You
Mhm.
got to go blended. There's no such thing as a non-blended cost to acquire. Make sure you're looking at all your channels
Oh,
consistently.
we're getting way off topic now.
But here's the other thing. The other thing you said, Kayla, which I think was really, really spot on, is that do not let metrics or do not let your plan stand in the way of you being agile and actually going and having real conversations with your customers. The people that
Mhm.
I've seen fuck this up the most are the ones that stare at their cost to acquire in their office all day and hit refresh on when they're running pay-per-click ads just to see what the latest metrics are and do that instead of actually going and having a real conversation with either a potential customer or a real customer and saying,
Mhm.
what do you like about this? Or what do you
Yeah.
not like? And then the second thing is that sunk cost fallacy, which is if I write down a business plan, that's the plan. It's
Yep.
like when we talk about bad VC, Anthony, this is bad private equity, which is like, look, we've built a financial model. Of course, the model, it goes up and to the right, like this is what we do. Of
Mhm.
course it does that. And you're like, well, there's competition. No, it goes up, right? You have to then be adjust to whatever the realities are of running in the, like what you see in the marketplace. And whatever you wrote down 15 minutes ago is probably going to be wrong, but you still got to write it down. At least that's my opinion. Anthony, agree, disagree?
So I actually have a story on this where I was talking to the founder of a company that raised, I don't know, $20 million to chase
Wow.
after a market, and $5 million in on their on the capital raise. They burned through 5 million. They realized that there wasn't a market there. And the leadership, not the investors, the leadership had a meeting and discussed what should they do next. And the decision was, well, the investors gave us $20 million to explore this opportunity, so we need to continue chasing this opportunity. We need to continue to chase our original hypothesis. And I thought that was such a colossal error in judgment. And it's exactly related to this. Like, if what you're doing isn't working, you have to change, and therefore you can, it gets back to this notion, and my aversion to a business plan is you can really easily fall in love with your own plan. You can fall in love with your own brand. You're emotionally invested in this thing that you're doing, and it's a trap. It's a pitfall for entrepreneurs. For anybody, in something that you have created, it is now you. Your identity is attached to it, and therefore, if it's harder to admit a mistake. It's harder to change a path because it was a lot of work to build it, and secondly, you have yourself invested in it. So, aligning with what you guys are saying is part. Kaylee, you said a business plan is a living document. A business is a living thing, and if you treat a living thing with an over-disciplined methodology, it's going to die. You have to continue to breathe life into it.
That's one of those things that both things are true.
Yes.
Which is you have to be disciplined about the way that you track and measure. And I'm with you, Kaylee. Like, cost to acquire and lifetime value are the two metrics that matter. Even though you don't know what that's going to be early on, you have to start to make some assumptions based on cost to acquire and lifetime value. But at the same time, Anthony, that's the law of escalating commitment. If I start with something that I think and I'm so attached to that thing, the longer I go doing that same thing without changing paths, the harder it is for me to go. And back before we had GPS in every single car, everybody knows what the law of escalating commitment is because you pass a turn and you're like, I'm pretty sure that's my turn. No, it's not. Every minute that you drive further down that road, it's harder for you to admit that you missed your turn, right? It's the same thing in businesses, which is the more you commit, the more that you think you're right, the more that you tell people you're right, the more you publish those ideas, the harder it is for you to go back and turn around. Mm-hmm. But Kaylee, I know we're kind of coming to the end of our time here, but practical advice for early stage founders like Anthony and I, what should we be thinking about with our business plan right now?
Oh, so many. I think what we're getting back to at the end of this entire conversation, especially like the example that you just brought up, Anthony, is coming back to your mission and your overall vision as a company. I think you, as an entrepreneur, we are automatically invested in our mission and our vision. But I think the big takeaway here with feedback for entrepreneurs is, believe in your mission and your vision, but don't be married to exactly what you think the execution is going to be to achieve that mission and vision. For example, like in my business, our mission is to bring more exceptional businesses to the market and keep them there. What that looked like a year ago and the additional opportunities that we've uncovered as a business today, actually just yesterday, I had a great conversation with one of my team members about how we can change that. If I weren't constantly having conversations with, prospective partners, with clients, with my team, then, I would be so stuck on what that original execution would be of my mission because I was married to exactly that execution of the mission. But I believe in the mission, which means that the exact execution is going to change. It's going to adapt. Um, and so I think that's the biggest that's the biggest thing. And also, plan and then plan your business, but then also plan to pivot and pivot to plan. Like
I love that.
you're going
Well
to be
said. Yeah.
constantly that I just came up with that like just now. So that comes to
New
you
tagline.
with
Good.
some espresso. Pivot,
All right.
plan to pivot and pivot to plan.
Well,
I think that's
the
the
summary.
biggest thing.
Go ahead. The summary there, I think, is when writing a business plan, have strong opinions weekly held.
Ooh, I like that too.
And so Chris, during the podcast, I've written our business plan down.
Try stuff.
Try stuff. That's it right there. That's
like
our current business plan.
That's our current business model. Yeah. Exactly.
Kaylee, where can we, first of all, where can we learn more about you, and then where can we learn more about business plans?
Yeah. So to learn more about me, you can email me. I guess I could drop my email here. Or you can also go to theexceptionalplan.com to set up time, with me or with one of my team members. And then if you want to learn more about business plans, there's a lot of resources online, but also, I'm happy to set up, free time with people if they have questions about their business plan or just they don't know what to do. I'm happy to just do a round table with them and answer any questions that they have.
I'll drop also follow Kaylee on LinkedIn, and I'll drop your LinkedIn information, or you can comment on the podcast on LinkedIn with your information. So on to the next section. So great that we can learn more. Also on business plans, on writing a business plan, SBA also has a lot. The Small Business Administration has a lot of great resources on writing and crafting a formal business plan. All right, Chris. Now we jump into Actually, Kaylee, I'm going to ask you first. Outside of the topic of this podcast, as a founder, what did you learn this week?
Oh my God.
Something new. Something that just
Oh,
I wish I would have known that last week.
I swear I learn something every second. But I think that this is really funny. And I think it's a really good reminder. I've been in my business for, years, worked with a lot of people, spoken with a lot of people. And I had a client call last week, like late last week. So it's still within this week. And I told my team, I go, guys, I completely bombed that call. Like I prepared for it, but it just execution, I bombed. And I told them, I think I was like, as a leader, like the thing that I learned is you can still fail. And it's actually really refreshing for your team for you to talk about your failures. I was, the laughing stock for a while there. They got a hoot out of it. But I told them, I was like, guys, I bombed it. This is what I did wrong. This is maybe what I kind of did right. But overall, I bombed it. So if you guys are ever getting down on yourself about a call not going perfect, hey, here's the founder, and the call didn't go well for myself. So take that as a way to, learn and grow. So that was my big lesson.
Chris, how about you?
I read a book that has nothing to do with being a founder, but everything to do with sort of the overall macroeconomic world. It's called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. It is wild. It is insane. It's a little bit dark and twisted as far as some of the tactics we used to use in the 80s to work internationally, but it also gives you a really interesting sense of the big global economy, how it's tied together, how developing countries look to try to bring in foreign countries like the United States, like China, to help them develop. Wild, wild book. Highly recommend it. It was recommended by one of our founder board members, Alex. Thank you, Alex. It is really, really good book. A little bit disturbing too, but it was really informative. How about you, Anthony? What did you learn?
I started listening to the interview of Elon Musk by Jordan B. Peterson just like this morning during my workout, and I know I learned some stuff. I just don't know what it is yet. Like they spoke in such. What I learned is I need to learn a lot more about philosophy, because what they were talking about was really interesting, and I want to learn more about how they are how they're talking about the human condition and how it interacts with AI, and how any way that I can find out more how Elon Musk thinks, I'm into it. So, yeah.
I mean, do we really want to know how he thinks? I'm not sure that we do. Like,
I want to know how that clock works. Yeah, I definitely do. I want. Not that I want to emulate it, because I can't, but I want to understand. You know, as a kid, I always used to pull mechanical things apart to figure out how it worked. Like, I want to figure out how Elon Musk works. I do want to understand that at a deep level. There's a lot of people that way. Elon Musk is definitely one of them. I want to know how his brain works.
I'm a Bezos gal. I want to understand how, someone said that they wanted to be like, the river in the Nile, and they were able to grow this conglomerate and yet execute on every single aspect of the conglomerate. That kind of goes against what we're told as entrepreneurs, like the riches is in the niches. Yeah, I'm the same way, but with Bezos, I want to understand, how did you grow this conglomerate, and how did you execute perfectly against all of these different sectors under one umbrella, business of
I'm just
Amazon.
back to the fact that he's a good-looking bald dude. Thank you. I mean, we need more bald entrepreneurs on this show, Anthony. That's what I learned.
He just started
Would
hitting
you
the
like
gym
for
really
me to?
hard.
Would you like for me to shave my head? Am I
I'm
being
not
asked
saying
for that
I'm
right
not
now?
saying go that far. I mean, maybe Anthony.
I'm dedicated, okay?
I mean,
I've shaved my head once. It's not pretty. You know those cartoons where the guy, like my era cartoons, where guy comes up and he says 1 lump or 2, and in his coffee he's talking about sugar cubes, and he goes 2, and he goes knock knock, and he gets 2 lumps. Yeah. That's my whole head. So it's not.
It's like
pretty.
Sputnik. It's round. It's huge. It's quite pointy.
I actually know what I look like bald, because I was Voldemort last year for Halloween.
Wow. And did you do the whole
I did everything, and I'm allergic to latex, so it was a little bit of a trip, after.
It almost made you actually.
I was dedicated.
Wow,
that is amazing, Kaylee. That is amazing.
Oh, it was terrifying. My husband couldn't look at me, and he was Harry Potter. Naturally.
Way to commit to the way to commit. It was like, look, I'm allergic to latex, and I may end up in the hospital later, but I'm doing this. Let's go.
My skin was bubbling. I couldn't see very clearly, but I almost won the competition. So almost. I didn't.
How did you not win that Halloween contest?
Yeah, what the fuck kind of judges did you have? You almost died.
It was based off of the crowd reaction, and I think people were honestly a little scared.
That's
I was a cross between Voldemort and what's the guy from Star Wars? Sim? What's his name?
Oh, the Darth Maul, or are you saying the dude with all the horns and stuff? Or
no, the dude that he looks like Voldemort, but in Star Wars. What is the Sith? The Sith?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What's his name? Yeah, the Sith Lord. Yeah.
Yeah, I looked like a cross between those. So I think I was just a little too scary. The person who won was dressed up like a female Willy Wonka. Meanwhile, I'm over here like of Voldemort, and I think
And Kaylee,
people would gasp when I went into the bathroom.
Kaylee,
Like,
somehow you were still more attractive than both of us, which is weird. That's it just sort of is what it is.
All right. With that, we're gonna end the episode of this episode of How to Founder. Just a reminder: follow us on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/company/howtofounder. We're trying to hit that 150 follower mark so we can start broadcasting live on events on that page. So please follow us there. You can find Chris, Kaylee, and I on LinkedIn as well. And that'll do it. Next time, we'll talk about mission, vision, and values. With that,
Big,
thank you.
meaty topic. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be fun. All right. Take care, guys.